stable. Water retention does tend to go down right after ovulation, but as any woman will tell you, the worst time for holding water for their body weight to go up is during that late luteal PMS phase, right? 5 to 7 pounds, 2 to 3 kilos or so, not unheard of, even for smaller women. Also progesterone, because it can bind to the androgen receptor, decreases muscle growth. It actually increases protein breakdown. So like I said, the general belief is that estrogen is bad. You will still hear women talking about banishing the estrogen. No, estrogen is really good. It blunts hunger, it increases fat burning, it increases insulin sensitivity, mostly does good things. Progesterone is really the nasty one. All right, so anyway, that's the base cycle.
And good planning can be the difference between success and failure. So what are appropriate rates of weight loss? Well, that should really be scaled to your body fat. Obviously, the more body fat you have, the more you can liberate at one time to replace that deficit, quote unquote. And there's a fair amount of research that shows the faster the rate of weight loss, the greater potential for lean body mass losses. Additionally, the faster the rate of weight loss, that means the lower the calories, which means the earlier you're going to have all of the metabolic and hormonal issues that we've been talking about, and that we definitely want to avoid, because they can have some semi-drastic consequences on your health and also your success.
Now, here is a graph that I have from a study that I just completed. So this is one of my studies. And as you can see, the group 1, I'm not going to say what the study is because it's in review now, but group 1 gained about 5 millimeters in biceps thickness. This is measured through ultrasound. And group 2 gained roughly 3 millimeters. So it's all right. That's obviously group 1 had a better results, but take a look at the individual differences across each group. I mean, look at this high responder who had over 7 millimeters, and here it's only 1, or just above 1 millimeter. So just within having the exact same routine and trying to control everything else as best we could, you still see this very wide individual response. And take a look at this here. Look at this dude. I mean, how would you like to be that guy? That's negative results after this was an 8-week training program. So I was training the 4 sets of biceps curls 3 days a week.
Exercise accounts for, in the literature, you'll see 15 to 30%, 15 to 50%. It varies quite a bit. So voluntary exercise. And then finally, the lowest component of energy out is the thermic effect of food. As we all know, protein has the highest thermic effect, and then second place is carbohydrate, and the lowest thermic effect from dietary fat. There is this false dichotomy that's often brought forth regarding the energy equation, or KICO, calories in, calories out. Some people say, no, KICO is bullshit, right? It's all about hormones. Hormones are all that matters. Well, what if it was about both? Why? Because hormones influence appetite, which ultimately influences eating behavior, which dovetails straight back to influencing energy in, which ultimately dovetails all the way back to the energy balance equation. So hormones are important to the energy balance equation in the sense that they influence appetite.
So again, this middle group here, these people, they had basically maintained their weight loss for a year, and yet even after 1 year, their metabolic rate was still a little bit slower than you would predict for someone of their weight and body composition and height and everything. Well, that's really interesting. You know, 100 calories per day approximately is not a huge number, all right? And it's probably not a big enough number to really impact people's tendencies to gain weight. And this has been tested where they've actually looked at the relationship between people's metabolisms and basically either weight loss, their tendency to lose weight, or their tendency to gain weight. And here was one particular study that was actually published this year. They looked at the relationship between resting metabolic rate and weight loss success, and they basically found no significant relationship at all. All right.
So the big one, right, insulin and glucagon, is what you hear about a lot. Insulin is the big storage hormone, right? Released due to carbohydrates, kind of due to proteins. Fat doesn't really raise insulin. But like I said, fat will store itself via ASP. That's where the whole Taubes nonsense. For all the research he said he did, the 5 years of intense research, it's amazing that he seems to have not read anything past about 85, because he didn't see the ASP research that fat will store itself just fine. I would mention when fat activates ASP, that actually stimulates insulin release. The body's not stupid, folks. If you eat fat, it's going to store fat. You're just not going to magically have it not do anything. That's just moronic, but so is his book.
We'll just finish off before we leave the carbohydrate by going back to that the idea that the fat story is the future of sports nutrition. This is an idea that comes around quite frequently, and it's currently popular again. And we've got a number of prominent sports physicians, sports scientists, sport doctors promoting this idea that athletes should be eating a high-fat diet to improve their ability to oxidize fat, based on the idea that the fat stores are going to be much more prevalent and able to support the exercise that they're doing. To address this, we recently did a study with race walkers to look at the prospect that this high-fat, low-carb diet would be better than high-carbohydrate forms in terms of training and allowing athletes to perform optimally. You'll be pleased to know that training over 3 weeks improves the aerobic capacity regardless of what diet you're on. But what was really important to us was to look at how well they were able to use this improvement in their VO2 max. So one of the ways that marathon runners and race walkers look at their aerobic capacity is their economy, the oxygen cost of walking at different speeds. And they do a 4-test or a 4-stage economy test where they walk at 4 different speeds and have a look at the oxygen cost of doing that. And you can see in this graph here that as a result of the high-fat, low-carb diet, their fat utilisation increased. You can see that by the drop in their respiratory exchange ratio post the intervention. And if you have a look at the oxygen cost of walking at this speed, you can see that it was maintained with the high carbohydrate diet, but to burn more fat required a greater amount of oxygen as a result of the low carb, high fat adaptation. This speed was equivalent to what they'd be walking at in their 50K race walk event.
Soy. There's a lot of concerns about soy protein, and it kind of blew up in the mid-2000s. And it's kind of become, the fervor's kind of dropped down a little bit. But there's some understandable concerns about soy protein, as there was a handful of studies that showed in men consuming soy protein that they saw a drop in testosterone or some other unfavorable hormonal effects on estrogen and testosterone. Now, there was a meta-analysis done in 2010 that overall concluded that soy likely does not significantly alter male hormone levels when taken in reasonable amounts. And that's good news, is that, you know, it's not like that scoop of soy protein you might have had post-workout, you know, turned you into a female. That's certainly not the case. But the story really doesn't end there. There's mixed data showing the effect of soy protein on sperm count, and I cited these 2 studies specifically because one shows that it negatively affects quality and quantity of sperm, and the other one shows it doesn't have any effect. So what's the deal? Why is it that there's some studies showing a change in hormonal status and sperm quality and some don't? Well, there's some evidence that individuals will metabolize soy differently based on their gut microbiota. So some people convert certain compounds in soy into estrogen-like substances at a higher rate and amount that might actually have a greater effect, and others don't. So there's no real way to know this unless you're going to get a pretty specific test that you're probably not going to find anywhere commercially. So maybe there is something to be concerned about. The good news is this is probably not a problem for women. So if you're a female, this is likely not an issue, and this is probably because we're dealing with just different quantities and profiles for hormones. You know, a man has a very low amount of estrogen compared to a woman, so a small effect on it's going to make a bigger difference. On the other hand, a woman, you know, a small effect on estrogen is kind of just a drop in the pond. So having any kind of systemic effect, either negative or positive, is unlikely, and they have also investigated the effects of like soy isoflavones on cancer risk, breast cancer risk, and there's also been mixed results there. So overall, I'm still wary about soy protein. So I think the best way to say it is that the controversy continues.